Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I've done like a recent reads like check-in. I typically like to talk about like 5 to 7 books per like check-in because I think it hits that nice sweet spot of like 13 to like 18 minutes. That's like the length of video that I typically enjoy when I'm not looking for like a long like research video. Yeah, it's been quite a while. I have 14 books that I've read since my last check-in, which is a lot more than I would usually like wait to do, but I've done a few like video projects since I last checked in, and while I'll quickly touch on them, I won't really go into much detail. So if you want more thoughts and opinions about like what I think about some of these books, I encourage you to go watch those videos, which I'll link down below. I think we will just get started. Let's start with the books that are featured in other videos. I did a dedicated reading vlog for one specific book. I vlogged it. I have my thoughts review on it in that video. If you want to just skip to the end of that video where I give like my full kind of summarizing thoughts, you can, but that was Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. This is the first book in the Expanse. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed the majority of it. I do look fondly, like when I think about it, it is like a mostly positive experience. There was one aspect that it rubbed me the wrong way, but again, go watch that video if you want more thoughts on this, and I will continue the series eventually. I also did a reading vlog where I read a couple of the romances that I picked up during the last iteration of the Stuff Your Kindle event, which is like a romance ebook buying event. Those 5 books were Ruthless King by Alison Ames. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. This is one of the better ones in my opinion. Sci-fi, mafia, ABO dynamics, really not my type of vibe, but I ended up liking it for the most part. And then I read Sons of Echidna by Athena and Bliss. This one was not very good. It read like a debut, and it is a debut. Yeah, I gave this like a 1.5 out of 5. I gave 1 star to books I don't want anyone to read, but this one was not good in most sense, but I don't really care if I think other people read it, whatever. And then after that, I read Chosen by the Alien Warrior by Skyla Stone. I gave this one 3 out of 5, a generous 3 out of 5, because it started off strong or well enough. It was originally going so well, and then the ending kind of dropped the ball a little bit. And then I read Flint by Eva Kent. This is a shifter romance. I gave this one 4 out of 5. We have a woman running away from a bad alpha. She finds a nice alpha. And then A Spirited Manor by Kate Danley. I think this one wasn't originally actually in that Stuff Your Kindle event, but I did get it on the same day, which is why I thought it was part of that haul. Either way, there was a little bit of a romance. This is more of a novella. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I actually this was a book that I typically would actually read under normal circumstances, not when I'm like looking for a romance. But again, those 5 books are in that romance reading vlog. So those were all the books that I talked about in other videos, so again, feel free to watch those. But I did read some YA books since I last checked in. I read Killer Instinct by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the second book in the like Naturals series, which I've really enjoyed. My first Jennifer Lynn Barnes was not a very good experience, but this series is like really good to me, or it's something that really like checks off the things that I really enjoy. This is like YA Criminal Minds. If you like Criminal Minds, you might actually like this. In this book, we follow a young woman named Cassie, and she's been recruited into this like young people's like FBI program because there's these group of teens that have very good instincts, things that you typically train law enforcement for, but these kids like naturally are gifted at that. I typically don't like police characters or characters that work with the police. It's just a thing that I don't like. I'm okay with it in this instance, but yeah, our main character Cassie is a very good profiler. There's another profiler on the team. There's someone who's very good at deducing whether someone's lying. Another person's really good at like facial body stuff, which in the real world I don't really put much stock into, but it's fictional, so we'll run with it. Each book so far has focused on a particular unsub, someone who's committing crimes, but there seems to be like a big arching story with Cassie and the death of her mother, or the disappearance of her mother, which we assume is she's dead. But this second book, can't really talk about it too much, but there's someone killing people and the teens want to get involved. They're not supposed to work on active cases, but they want to. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, so I don't really have too many negatives to talk about other than 2 things. one's subjective and the other one just really gets on my nerves. And as a profiler, Cassie likes to get into the mind of the killer, and sometimes she's very melodramatic about it, and maybe you could like chalk that up to that she's like really young, so it's really hard for her to put like a wall between the killer and herself. But she gets into these moments where she thinks she's like almost as bad as a killer, and it's like, girl, you've actually like, you've never killed anyone. I don't know why you think you're like on the same level, you know what I mean? Teen stuff, whatever. And then there's like a love triangle here that kind of gets decided upon. I might have chosen the other guy, but some people would choose the guy that she chose. It's up to you. But yeah, 4.5 out of 5. It's still a very good rating. I really enjoyed the series. I kind of want my own copies. I borrowed it from the library, so yeah. I also read The Empty Tomb by Jonathan Stroud. This is the last book in the Lockwood and Company series, which I didn't know going into it. I thought for some reason there was another book, but this one kind of wraps it up. And it is like a good ending, but it was not this big climactic event, and then the story wraps up on like a good note. So that kind of let me down. But I've talked about the series before, but if you've never heard of it, this book takes place in a world where ghosts exist, and they regularly do like come up from like the grave or whatever. And it's been like 50 years since this phenomenon has started, and a bunch of ghost hunting companies have kind of started, and they quickly notice that children or younger people have a better connection with ghosts. They see them better, they can hear them better, so they employ children to do the dangerous work of like exorcising these ghosts, while the adults do like the paperwork, and they're the ones in charge of the company. But we follow Lockwood and Company, which is an independent group that is run and operated by children. There's no adult supervisor really until like the later book. For the first few books, we do have like a monster of the week almost, and in the latter half of the series we really focus on this bigger event that's kind of answering some questions as to like, how did this phenomenon start. I did overall like the series. Like, this is a series that I think I will get like physical copies for, because I only have the first 2 books, even though books 3 and 4 are my favorite. I do like the series overall. There's not a thing that I've read that's too similar, especially for like YA younger readers. I used to think this was like middle grade, but it's also in some parts kind of YA, so that's kind of that middle ground. If you're looking for like a middle grade into a YA read, I think this is like a good series. And it's spooky because there's ghost hunting. It might be the perfect season to start reading the series. Anticlimactic ending, which kind of sucked, but it was like a good, like a fine good ending overall, so I gave it like 4 out of 5 stars. It's good, it's fine. And then I did a reread of Truthwitch by Susan Dennard. I've been wanting to continue with the Witchlands series by this author, but it's been literally 2019, so a couple years since I read the first book, and I definitely needed the refresher. I was reading this and I don't remember a lot of the stuff that happened, but this is a very creative YA book that I think has similarities and tropes to like other YA fantasy, but I do think this one kind of stands out on its own, mostly because of the magic system. But I do think this author is fairly good at like telling the story that she wants to tell. In this book, we follow 2 young women who are really good friends, but they're more like sisters. And I will say though that a lot of fantasy books have like 2 young women that grew up together and they're like best friends that are supposed to be like sisters, but this is like one of the few books that they actually do read like sisters, or they have that strong bond that actually reads like sisters. The magic system is fairly unique, specifically with thread witches, I think is what they called, or what they're called, and they see like threads of people and how they connect. Really cool. There are other witches that are more like just like elementals, but there's some magic here that's really cool. One of our main characters is a Truthwitch, so she can like know when people are lying or being deceptive. This is one of those stories where it's kind of hard to like pin down like a concise summary. I always give like the Game of Thrones example because that's like one of the more popular series. Whether you've read the books or not, you kind of have like an understanding of what that series is about, where you can't, there's no like little 2 sentences that I can say that will summarize the whole story, but just know that at the beginning of the story there is a 20-year truce that has been keeping the peace, but it's like almost over. The truce has almost like hit its end mark, and a lot of people want that truce to continue, and so they can maintain peace within this continent, but some people don't. But there's also like a looming threat. I know that's not really the best summary that really goes into detail, but it's one of those books where I can't really give you much details. The story moves on at like a good pace. I will say one thing that kind of did bother me, and it's not like I'm not paying attention or anything, at some moments I did feel like there needed to be like some sort of like some audience awareness. I don't know if you've ever seen like those like Marvel movies, which Marvel, I'm assuming you've seen one, where the main character or someone is like very like telling instead of showing like the reason why I turned evil is because of this, and what I'm gonna do is this, and then this, and they kind of give you like their motivations like right at you. It's very like audience aware dialogue, and I kind of needed a little bit of moments for that here, because at some point I was like, wait, why is this person involved with the story? Like, what's their purpose here? Like, I don't, like, why are you here? Like, did I miss something? I don't get it. Little things like that would have helped me understand where certain parts fall in the story, but that could have just been me. Maybe I wasn't paying attention enough. But yeah, great reread. I really want to continue the series, so I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I did read Magic Bleeds, which I think is the 3rd or 4th book in the Kate Daniel series by Ilona Andrews. Now, I don't remember too many of the details of this book because it has been a while, and it's not because I didn't like this book. If you've seen any of my past recent reads, I absolutely love this Kate Daniel series. The first book kind of like blew me away, because I don't expect first books in urban supernatural paranormal series to be so good. They typically take you a little bit to like warm up to the characters and stuff. That's usually how it is for me anyways. But right off the bat, I really enjoyed the series. I can't really talk too much about Magic Bleeds. It's like the 3rd or 4th in the series, so plot wise, just know that there's a monster of the week that kind of ties into Kate's backstory, and we're kind of getting into the details of like who her father is and what his place is in history and her life. But I really enjoyed it, really fun. I love the romance between Kate and Kuran, however you pronounce his name. He's like a lion shifter, but the species of lion is like a prehistoric lion. It's this whole thing, really fun. What I do like about this series that I always tend to mention in recent reads is that it takes place on Earth, but it takes place in a world where magic and tech is always kind of trying to like battle for dominance. There are moments in the book or in the series where magic is more prevalent, and there are moments in the book where technology is more prevalent. When magic is prevalent, tech doesn't seem to work that well, and in vice versa. So I think that's a really cool setting. These past few weeks have been truly my like Patricia Briggs moment. I've loved Patricia Briggs's like Mercy Thompson series. Again, my previous recent reads, I tend to like throw in one. I have a few Patricia Briggs books to talk about. I have 3 Patricia Briggs books to talk about. I have Silence of Fallen. This is the 10th book, I think, in the Mercy Thompson series. It's a 10th book. I know it sounds, I'm being repetitive, so I can't really give you like a full summary of like the story until now. Mercy Thompson's a really spunky coyote shifter who is a VW mechanic, and she gets into a lot of like monster of the week drama with the supernatural world. I don't want to spoil like her romances and stuff, but at this point she has a partner who she's been with for quite some time now. They love each other. I love their romance. At the start of the series, werewolf and fae community have like come out to the public, to the human public, and said, hey, we exist, we're here, and they're kind of trying to like maintain peace, some like more than others, but that's kind of like the setting. Really fun. One of my favorite like main characters. I absolutely adore her. I don't think we've had dual perspective before. We follow Mercy and her partner. I don't want to spoil anything if you're just starting the series, but we get his POV in this book, and I think that was great. Mercy in this one gets kidnapped and is taken to Europe. So a new setting, really interesting characters here. I really enjoyed this one, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This is one of my favorites in the series so far. I know that I'm catching up to the Mercy Thompson like series as far as like what's been released, so I wanted to start on the Alpha and Omega series, which follows Mercy's like adoptive brother Charles, who is like the only born werewolf in this world. I think most werewolves are turned, and he was born werewolf. His mother is also Native American. I actually don't remember what community she's part of, what community he's part of, but that is something that is a bit more apparent in the series so far. I read the prequel, and then I read the first book in the Alpha and Omega series. The prequel is called Alpha and Omega, and it was originally part of like a bind of a few other short stories from other authors. I only listened to the prequel on audiobook from my library, and it's literally Charles, our main character, meeting this very wounded Omega wolf named Anna, and it's like their love story. This particular story starts off even before the Mercy Thompson series starts. This is before the werewolves and the fae have kind of come out to the public, so that's a really interesting place to start. It gives us more room, more time to grow these characters. The first book was really quick, fast, and these two characters like immediately like hit it off. It's a short audiobook. I think it's like a little over 3 hours, and I listen to audiobooks pretty quickly, so can't really say too much. I'm really excited to see where these two go. Charles is a very intimidating force. He is like the strong man for his father. His father is essentially like the head werewolf of like the Americas, like I think North and maybe South. I could be wrong about that, but he's very intimidating. He's a very dominant werewolf, and Charles is like his enforcer. If some werewolf needs to be put down, Charles is the one to do it. He has like a very dominant alpha wolf as well, so that means most people tend to respect him like right off the get-go. He's very strong, very formidable. And then I read the first book in the series after the prequel, and that was Cry Wolf, I think is what it's called. In this one, Anna has gone back to Montana with Charles and his father's pack, and she's kind of settling in, getting to know people, getting to really understand what she can do as an Omega, which is a wolf that we haven't really seen before, at least in the Mercy Thompson series. Her role in the pack is very different than obviously other alphas and betas. And I do want to say, I know if you read romance, you probably know what like ABO fics are. This is not like that at all. This is like a different take on ABO stuff that probably predates like the supernatural ABO stuff from like fan fiction. So just wanted to note that. I do really love Patricia Briggs' stuff. I really want physical copies of like anything in this world. I just really love it. So I gave both of the Alpha and Omega books 4 out of 5 stars. I noticed that I forgot to talk about one YA book, and that was The Night in Question by Kathleen Glasgow and Liz Lawson. This is a YA mystery novel. This is the second book in the Agatha series, which I really like the first book. This one was maybe not like necessary to the story, but it's nice to see these characters again. I think they were charming, and these two girls became friends in the first book, and they have a very unique friendship. It's almost like kind of frenemy Serena Blair thing. Maybe not as like aggressive, but they do bump heads a little bit. It's definitely a female friendship that is not shown too much in books that I liked seeing. This second book follows their main characters, Alice and Iris, and one of their classmates is attacked and another one is accused of doing it. And while they kind of solve this crime, they also end up solving or getting involved with the death of this like 1950s like Marilyn Monroe-esque starlet, that she kind of died, and most people assume that she like jumped or fell off this high building, and that's it. They kind of solve these two mysteries like in tandem. They're kind of connected in some way, which I love when like an older crime solves like a newer crime, you know, that kind of dynamic. So I did like the story overall. I did like the mystery. It's more of like an homage to Agatha Christie. The series is called The Agathas, so if you're looking for like a retelling, that's not really this. It's more like a love letter YA version to Agatha Christie. I will say that for me personally, when there's a mystery and we're trying to solve a crime that's happened, and I hope this isn't spoilery too much, I do love when the bad guy gets their comeuppance, when they get what they deserve. And I feel like I didn't quite get that at the end of the series, or at the end of the book. That to me, And the last book that I want to talk about for this recent reads is probably one of my favorite things that I've read this year and started this year, and that is The Siren Depths by Martha Wells. This is the third book in the Books of the Rexura series. There's definitely more in this world that she has written, but I feel like books 1 through 3 have a nice arc that you could maybe take a pause at if you're not super in love with the series. I think this is a nice little chapter that you can like close up on. I'm gonna continue reading because it's like my favorite thing I've ever read in quite some time. This world is so imaginative and so fantastic. In this book we follow our main character named Moon. He's this kind of like dragon, lizard, gargoyle type shifter, wyvern type shifter who has like a ground form and like a winged form, and he's never really met anyone who kind of like is like him species wise. There's no like humans in this world. They're all like very imaginative, fantastical races, and he's never met anyone like him, and he kind of goes from like community to community trying to fit in, but he never really does. It also doesn't help that he kind of looks like this other like predatory species. He's not quite like them, he kind of resembles them in a way, so he kind of gets shunned a lot until he does meet an older man, like older, like more grandfatherly like figure, who is like him and is like, hey, I can take you to our community, our tribe, you would fit in because you're of our species. And he's like, okay, like he's very hesitant, but he wants to know other people like him. There's a catch with that invitation, and that's where you start off in the first book, and that catch kind of comes into fruition in this third book. This book deals with Moon's origins and where he came from before he found his new tribe. I can't give too much into it. It is such a great series. I love this. If you love anthropology and fantasy, I think you'll really like the series. Martha Wells is an anthropologist, and yeah, this series is, I love it so much. There are outside threats to Moon and like his community, but I mostly wanted to keep focusing on like Moon getting to understand like the cultural norms of these people that he hasn't grown up with. Those would be like the boring parts of like a plot, but they are my favorite in this particular series. I absolutely love it so much. 5 out of 5 stars. Like obviously I love this series so much. I can't stop smiling when I think about the series. But yeah, and that's pretty much it. Those are the last few books that I've read since I last checked in. Again, make sure to check out those videos if you are interested in hearing what I have to say about them in more detail. I will link those videos down below. I will also link my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to talk to me down below in the comments. I'd like to hear anything you have to say down below. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out. Also, sorry for the snoring.